Good evening. It's good to see you again. So today we'll be talking about Miguna Miguna. There's a big case that's happening around. He won 7 million Kenyan shillings, so that's a lot of money. And then some public officials are supposed to pay for it. I'll talk about it. And the judge says that his human rights were violated by the government and by these officials that I will talk about. And yeah, it's a big deal because I think you remember it was a big story when he was being thrown out of the country. I am not boarding. That is what he said, and it became a slogan around. So let us look at this case and let us see the merits of it, the demerits of it, as in what can we learn from this particular instance. So I begin. So how did Miguna get to Canada for the first time ever, right? And I'm taking this information from Mwenda Njoka. He's the spokesman for the government, the Minister of Interior and Coordination of National Government. That was in 2018, 7th February 2018. So how did he get to Canada? So in 1987, Miguna applied for a Kenyan passport, right? And he wanted to travel to Cuba. For those who know Cuba, that's Fidel Castro territory, right? And that's Che Guevara territory. That's where they began the Cuban Revolution. And it's a communist state. So Miguna was trying to travel there. And if you remember back in the day, the universities, even the word comrade, it's Russian, right? So the people who are trying to bring about a revolution, they mostly were allied to the Soviet Union or to socialist ideals. And Miguna was trying to go there. And the question is, why was he trying to go there? What was happening during that time, right? Because associating with people is not bad, even if they're socialists or communists, it's not bad. So why was he going there? Why did he feel that he had to get a passport to go there? Was it out of fun? No, it wasn't. In 1987, that's the run-up to the 1988 elections. That's the year before the 1988 elections. And for those who remember, that was the Mlolongo system. That's when Kenya was a one-party state, right? And the president, who had just survived a coup in 1982 and then an election in 83, he decided that this time they'll have a queuing system, because you might bribe people and then they might vote for the others. This time we want to see who they'll vote for. So guys, in the KANU primaries, KANU was the only party that was allowed. They had to align behind a picture of a candidate that they liked. So you guys were behind a picture, right? And then they would count, and they say, yeah, that guy won the primary. And now the national election was just a formality. So that was what was happening at that time. And people were angry about it. But how many people are brave about it, right? Like there's an example. I got it from the New York Times. There is a publication. It was a church publication. The church was the vocal body at that time, right? The vocal organized body. Because the government was beating up any organization that was opposing it. That is why we had a one-party state, because the other guys could not oppose it. So this guy, he's beyond, and he's a preacher. It's a public publication, and the government bans it. And this guy says the reason why the government banned this publication was that he said that this democracy is a fallacy. You guys are telling us to vote behind a candidate, right? And you're calling it democracy. This is not democracy. You've put a blanket over us, right? And you're calling it democracy. And people at the down below the blanket, they're fighting. They're fighting for power. And when the people are fighting for power, the strong ones, it's the poor who suffer. So that's what this guy was saying. And then they banned that publication, and the government was really cracking down, running up to that election, and even afterwards. So Miguna was running away, and it's understandable why he was running away. So how did he get away? There's a foreign country, Canada, I think, and he provided him with travel documents. Because remember, he had applied for a passport, but it was denied. It was rejected on 12th September 1987. So now here comes the exile part. He went to Canada, right? They provided him with the travel documents, and then After that, he became a Canadian citizen. That's how he's able to acquire a Canadian passport, from what I understand, right? So we already know how he got there. I'm hoping that history helps. And yeah, the history of the one-party states, what was going on there, I hope it helps, right? So now let's go to like this beef that they have with the Kenyan government. Where did it come from? Who is right and who is wrong, right? So that we can argue from an informed position. See, that's a good place to be, an informed position. So the relevant acts and articles of the Constitution that I'm going to quote, I hope that they'll be helpful to you. I'm going to start with the Kenya Citizenship and Immigration Act, number 12 of 2011, section 10. And this is what it says. A person who was a Kenyan citizen, by birth, and who ceased to be a Kenyan citizen because he or she had acquired citizenship of another country, may apply in the prescribed manner to the Cabinet Secretary to regain Kenyan citizenship. So this is what it says. A person who was a Kenyan citizen by birth. So this Immigration Act, it's contemplating the fact that you could not, that perhaps somehow you could lose that citizenship. And in the words they use, this one is ceased to be a Kenyan citizenship. Why? Because you acquired citizenship of another country. Remember, this is after the 2010 Constitution. This is an act of 2011, and it's contemplating the fact that you could actually have ceased to be a Kenyan citizen at some point in time. And for you to regain that citizenship, you need to do this, the prescribed manner, which is you need to prove that you are a Kenyan citizen back in the day, right? And then you need to prove that you are a citizen of another country, like where are you coming from? So in this case, if it was Miguna, he needed to prove that he's a Canadian citizen, right? And he needed to prove that he was a Kenyan citizen at some point in time, right? If he had ceased to be a citizen, right? So that was the government position. That's what they were arguing. And the government was arguing that Miguna did not move as per that prescribed manner, right? And so they could not give him a Kenyan passport, and so he could not be in Kenya because he doesn't have a passport. So I got this from a reporter, and he says that Miguna denies the fact that at that time, when you become the citizen of another country, you could lose your citizenship. So it says that he denies that fact, right? So I'm not sure if they are misquoting the reporter or if the reporter is misquoting, or I don't know what's happening. But what I do know is that it's section, like, it's very clear. This Immigration Act, it's very clear that you could have lost citizenship at some time, you could have ceased to be a citizen at some time, and if that happened, then you need to do this and this and this and that. So what we need to know is that if Miguna lost his citizenship, and we'll investigate that as we go. Now, let's go to section 33 of that act, right? A person whose presence in or entry into Kenya is unlawful, right? So this is an act that deals with how you're, if you can get, you can throw somebody out of the country, if you can force him to board that plane. This is what this section deals with, right? And this is what it says. It's the immigration section. A person whose presence in Kenya or entry into Kenya is unlawful, right? Then you can throw him out of the country, right? A person who you believe that he's a security threat, right? You can throw him out of the country. And if somebody orders that they should be thrown out of the country based on some given reason, then they should be thrown out of the country. This somebody is somebody in authority, like a security agent, right? So these are the three reasons. There are many reasons, but these are the ones that I saw that are relevant to this thing. Let's go to section 43. What does it say? It says that and this is where Matiang'i comes in. The cabinet secretary may make an order in writing, right? And then with that order, he can throw somebody out of the country if that somebody went and violated section 2A of the penal code, right? And violated something under the penal code, right? And he can remove them immediately and indefinitely, right? So this is the government argument. This is what they are saying. they were saying that Miguna is not a citizen based on this act, that he ceased to be a citizen when he went to Canada. At that time, he could not be a citizen of two countries. You had to choose one, right? And Miguna chose Canada, and he was able to acquire a Canadian passport. And then so these guys are saying that at that time, I think you remember this time, right? At this time, Miguna it was the swearing in ceremony for Raila, right? There was a bit of turmoil in the country and all of those things. So you could easily say that he was kind of like a security threat to the nation. And so they could use that. And then given that, right, and you're also saying that his presence is unlawful because he does not have a Kenyan passport, right? And I don't know what happened to his Canadian passport. He doesn't have a Kenyan passport. Then Matiang'i, as the cabinet secretary, can make an order, and based on that order, you can throw him out of the country. So that's the government argument. So this one is a section of an act. It's an act. What does the Constitution say? What does it say? So I went to article, like the 2010 Constitution now. What does it say? Article 16, Chapter 3, Article 16 of dual citizenship. It says that a citizen by birth does not lose citizenship by acquiring the citizenship of another country. You do not lose it at any given point when you acquire the citizenship of another country. It does not even say, as in, how much citizenship can you acquire? It does not even say that. Can you be the citizen of 15 countries and still be a Kenyan citizen? It is very clear. You do not lose citizenship by acquiring citizenship of another country. And that's where it stops. Very simple. Chapter 3, Article 17, it's on revocation of citizenship by birth, right? And revocation of citizenship. And it does not contemplate any situation, contemplate any kind of situation like that, right? So based on these two articles, then the judge can argue that Miguna did not lose his citizenship, right? The other guys, they can also argue that there was no revocation of citizenship by birth. It's not contemplated under this constitution, right? So based on these two articles, you can argue that, and you can see how Miguna would win the case based on these two articles. But there's another one. Article 14, citizenship by birth, right? It comes before the ones that I mentioned. And this is what it says. This is in the Constitution. A person who is a Kenyan citizen by birth and who has ceased to be a Kenyan citizen because the person acquired citizenship of another country is entitled on application to regain Kenyan citizenship. So it says that you could be a Kenyan citizenship, but then you ceased to be a Kenyan citizen because of acquiring the citizenship of another country. So even in this constitution, it actually contemplates what the government is arguing, such that Miguna could have ceased to be a Kenyan citizenship because of acquiring a citizenship of another country. And what it does, it gives you a way of regaining that citizenship. And how do you do that? By that Immigration Act that I quoted, the prescribed manner, application for it. So I noticed a bit of problem with this too. Like, how can you say that a person does not lose citizenship? There is no contemplation for revocation of citizenship by birth, right? And then at the same time you're saying that who has ceased to be a Kenyan citizenship. So if you never lost it, then could you have ever ceased to be a Kenyan citizenship? To be a Kenyan citizen? If you never lost it, then based on what do you regain it? I'm hoping that you're getting my point. So anyway, based on these two things, you have to look at two things. Could he not have lost it and then still regain it? Could you not lose something and then regain something? It sounds funny. Let me explain. Loss is being deprived of something or cease to have something. Like you can be deprived of a citizenship and cease to have it, right? Was Miguna deprived of his citizenship? The Constitution says that you cannot be deprived of it, right? And then just a definition of regain. Regain means to obtain permission or use of something after losing it, after you lost it, right? So if you did not lose it, and regaining means you are taking it after you lost it, then it means that you cannot regain citizenship, right? Because you never lost it. That condition was not satisfied. The condition of losing it so that you can regain it, that losing it never came into force. So there's no regaining it. You always had it. So that's the first definition. The second one is that lose, like I checked the Oxford Dictionary, the traditional one, it means to have to give up something, which is different from being deprived of something. So perhaps in this case, Miguna had to give up his citizenship so that he could run away from Kenya, because there was something bad that was happening here. He was running away from the scenarios in the 1980s and the elections that were coming in 1982 and the crackdown that was coming. So you could say that he had to give it up, right? And then when you look at the definition from the old dictionaries, it says to regain is to get something that you no longer have, especially an ability or a quality. So in this case, if you use these two definitions, then you could actually lose something, right? And then regain it at some other point, right? That the two can be concurrent, that the Article 14 of the Constitution would not be in conflict with Article 16 of the Constitution, right? And I believe that is the case, because it goes on to get something back that you no longer have, especially an ability or a quality, that nobody deprived you of your citizenship, right? You had to give it up. Let me give you an example of how that can happen. Remember this, people can deprive children of their innocence, and the children can be active participants in that deprivation because they do not understand, they do not know, right? But when you have to give it up, it means that you are fully aware of what is happening and that it is a sad event, but you have to give it up because you have no other choice. There is something that is preventing you from holding on to it, and I believe that is what has happened to Miguna. He had to give it up. And yes, it's a way of being deprived of your citizenship, but it's still a voluntary kind of deprivation. You have to give it up. So if you had, then you had to regain it. You can regain it, especially when it's a quality. You see, the reason why it's important for people to, the reason why it's important for us to, for somebody to apply for that citizenship after he lost it before the 2010 Constitution, right, is because you need to know why he gave it up. It's important. And then when this one, the definition follows, especially an ability or a quality, then it means that to be Kenyan is to have a certain quality. There's a certain quality to it. So before you regain that quality, right, we need to know why you gave it up. Why did you give it up? Let us understand. And was it, it's very dangerous when somebody goes away, pledges allegiance to another country, and then comes back, and then you just give it, you're just free with it, because perhaps his allegiance is not to us. Perhaps what he ran away from, we haven't dealt with it. So that's why we need to know that. So I don't think I'll dwell on that. I think I've dwelled so much on that, but anyway, I don't think I'll dwell on that anymore. So what did other Kenyans do, right? There are so many Kenyans who went to the States, who went to Canada, and got those citizenships and those other things, right? What happened to them? Did they follow this Immigration Act 2011 after this constitution? And if they did follow it, then why would Miguna not follow it? The government on that given issue, like it should say, this number of people applied for this, why are you not applying for it? Again, it doesn't mean that those people who applied for it makes it right, right? I believe it's argument that makes it right. The argument. So we need to be discussing about the constitution and the clarity of that constitution. Is it clear on this issue? Is it wavering on this issue? Personally, I believe that it's clear that before 2010, people could have given up their citizenship for some kind of reason, right? And now to regain that, to regain the quality of being a Kenyan, right, we need to know why they gave it up, and we need to know that their allegiance is back with us, right? Because they gave it up. It's not like today when you become a dual citizenship, you're not giving up anything because you're still a Kenyan. But at that time, you felt strongly that you had to give up being a Kenyan because you couldn't have both, right? So it's a different kind of ball game, and we need to know why they felt they had to give it away. So that's the reason. And if you follow the Constitution, I think, and the letter of the Constitution, would realize that this judge, I think I'll go to that a bit later. So Miguna did not do that. He says that he never renounced his citizenship, and you all had all that drama, everything. And the government was adamant, because I believe the government felt that the law was on its side, right? We may not like the government, but we need to like the rule of law. Even when the government is on the right side, it's okay, right? You don't have to be against it all the time. So anyway, how did Miguna gain his passport? Because the government took it away. How did he gain his passport? He gained his passport in 2009, right? At that time, it was still illegal for you to be a dual citizen in 2009. So how did he gain his passport in 2009 when it was illegal for you to be a dual citizen? Who facilitated that illegality, right? Because the constitution came, it's 2010. 2009, that's when Miguna got his Kenyan passport. And he got it because of Otieno Kajwang. You remember? Bado mapambano, that kind of song. I think you remember that guy. He was very jovial. I liked him. And he got it because he had somebody in power, and he was an advisor to Raila at that time. And that would give you an idea of how things happen in Kenya, right? Because other people may follow the law. In 2009, perhaps somebody wanted to be a Kenyan citizen at that point. Perhaps he wanted to enjoy that quality of being a Kenyan citizen. Perhaps there's a quality to it. But he couldn't. Yet Miguna can and could and did, because he had people in power. That should be an issue for all of us. So he acquired his Kenyan passport in 2009. He didn't renounce his Canadian citizenship, but he still acquired that one. And it was illegal for you to be a dual citizen at that time. So this gives you an idea of Kenya, and it gives you an idea of both sides. They don't follow the law, any of these sides. It's all about power. Like that guy who said, the Beyond guy, the church publication, the guy who published that Beyond publication. It's all a fight under here, right? We are claiming that it's democracy. Even today we are claiming that it's democracy, but it's all a fight down here. And the poor are the ones who are suffering because they can't see how the fight is going. They can't see where they can run. There's a blanket over them, and this blanket we're calling democracy. And you can see it here, because it was before 2010, and he still got a passport, and it was illegal for him to have one because he was not a Kenyan citizen, because he had given that up when he took up the Canadian citizenship. So not to dwell on that again too much. So things go on, and that's how he was able to vie for the governorship, I think, because now you have a passport. I think you could vote as a you could vote with your with your passport or with your ID. I'm not sure, but I think you could also apply with your passport or with your ID, right? Again, the illegality started with Kajwang, who was a Raila person, and it continued under Uhuru, who was not a Raila person at that time, but now he's a Raila person. So anyway, what happened afterwards? Miguna had been traveling with the Kenyan. He'd been using the Canadian passport all along, and in June 2017, he renewed his Canadian passport. Just a few weeks before the general election, he renewed his Canadian passport. Why would you renew a Canadian passport when you are fighting for an election in Kenya, when you are seriously at the forefront of that fight? And the funny thing was Roslyn Akombe, You remember her? She went to the UN in the US, in New York, and that's when she started spitting a lot of stuff about the elections in Kenya, how they were unfair and all of those things. And she was lighting fires in the US. And Miguna is here just before the general elections in June 2017. And he knew that a fire is coming, right? Because Miguna is an agitator. And that's when he renews his passport. People know that they can run and then leave the fire burning and it will burn us. But these guys, even before they start that fire, they know that they can run. Be careful. Let us be careful with these people. So anyway, just to finish up, was it a sound judgment? The judgment that the judge made, was it sound? What do you think? Was it sound? Based on Article 227, the Immigration Act of 2011, which clearly contemplates that you need to do this if you lost your citizenship before 2010, because you took up another citizenship, right? What about the Constitution, which contemplates that you could actually have lost that citizenship, right? And then now you need to regain it, right? And yeah, so I hope I've given the two sides of the argument. Personally, I do not believe that this judgment was a sound one. I am not boarding, right? Because the Immigration Act is clear, the Constitution is clear. You gave it up because of some reason, right? You can regain that quality of being a Kenyan, right? Tell us why you gave it up so that you can deal with that issue. And then, yeah, we can move from that point, right? Because unlike the other guys, the guys who are getting citizenship right now, you gave it up. And we need, as a society, we need to know why. Because perhaps you're coming back and your allegiance is somewhere else. You could vie for something and your allegiance is somewhere else. It's very, very important for a nation to understand why it was given up and why you're coming back, and to have an affirmation from you that you want that quality of being a Kenyan citizen again. So anyway, just to finish up, I'm going to go to another article of the Constitution. That this is Article 12, and it says every citizen is entitled to the rights of being a citizen, all of those things, and to be given a Kenyan passport and an ID, right? And it says that denial, suspension, or confiscation of that passport is necessary. Oh, sorry, is not necessary, but is contemplated that it can be they can be confiscated based on an act of parliament that satisfies Article 24. So actually taking Miguna's passport, right, even if he's a citizen, is contemplated under the Constitution, right? Even if he's a citizen, it's contemplated under the Constitution. So when he is not a citizen, then yeah, the quality of being a Kenyan, he no longer has certain privileges, and he can be declared a prohibited immigrant under that section 11 of the Immigration Act, right? So anyway, I think that I've gone through it, right? What did the judge use to come to his decision, right? What authority? Because every time I'm reading this judgment, I'm not seeing where the judge said, like, I'm mentioning articles of the Constitution, I'm mentioning sections of the Immigration Act. I am not seeing a place where the judge quoted something like an Immigration Act, where he quoted the Constitution, and then his judgment was based on that. So I'm thinking, what authority did he use to come to that decision? Or did he take himself as the authority, right? If we voted for a constitution that contemplates, that says that somebody may have lost that citizenship and should regain it, and this is how they should regain it, and then there's an act of parliament showing how you should regain it, then that's the people, that's parliament. But then a judge would come and say, those people are confused. What authority did he use? Is he his own authority, right? Did he say that there's a conflict between the articles of the Constitution that I mentioned, Article 14 and Article 16? Did he say that there's a conflict so that he would choose one above the other? What authority did he use? What are the implications of this judgment on the Immigration Act? because it's very clear people are supposed to regain this way. So if the judge says that you never lost it, right, so you don't need to regain it, then what are the implications on that judgment, on that act? Is it null and void? What are the implications on Article 15(5) of the Constitution that contemplates that somebody could have ceased to be a citizen and this is how they should regain it? What are the implications on that aspect of the Constitution, right? What are the implications of the judgment on the civil service if he is wrong? Imagine being a civil servant and doing things based, you're thinking this is based upon the law, and you actually have an argument based on the law, and then somebody is fining you 7 million. What would happen to future decisions in the civil service? Judicial activism is wrong. You cannot be your own authority. You must follow the Constitution. You must follow the acts of Parliament, and your decision must be explained based on that, right? So that's my opinion. I'm not sure. That's my opinion. Yeah, I haven't seen any citations and stuff. I want you guys to remember the Babu Owino story, right? A judge orders a recount, and then the recount is made, and then the recount Babu wins. He still nullifies the election, right? You guys remember Justice Tanui? If we let judges to make decisions that are not fully backed by the Constitution and acts of Parliament, then we put ourselves in danger, because they'd only be looking for an excuse to make a certain judgment. They'd not be looking at the law or the Constitution, and that's a very dangerous trend, right? So that's what I had for today. I hope that I'll see you guys on Monday at 5 p.m. Thank you so much for watching. Invite other people to watch. Thank you for the guys who gave me topics, and I'll be, I'm developing a list for them, and we'll handle them as time goes. So goodbye. Share these videos. Thank you.